The Thief in Running Shoes? Alex, a wiry man in his late 30s, with a perpetual shadow of stubble and sharp, calculating eyes, sipped from a takeaway coffee cup. He winced. "Why does coffee from these places always taste like cardboard?" he muttered, holding the cup at arm's length as though it were toxic. "Maybe because you're always picking the cheapest cafe you can find," Clara replied with a smirk, her own cup steaming in her hands. Her dark curls were tied into a neat ponytail, and her hazel eyes glimmered with both amusement and sharp intelligence. "And don't blame the coffee. I'm pretty sure your taste buds are broken from all those late-night takeaways." "Late nights fueled by cases like this one," Alex shot back, leaning his head against the headrest. "Remind me again why we're parked here freezing our arses off instead of, I don't know, solving a murder or something more worthy of our talents." Clara glanced at him sideways. "Because," she said with exaggerated patience, "our cunning thief, as the chief inspector so dramatically put it, has managed to make us look like fools." 3 weeks, Alex. 3 weeks, and not a trace of him other than some grainy CCTV footage of a guy jogging away with bags of loot. And you know what really gets me? That we're chasing someone who probably watches motivational YouTube videos before their morning heists. "No," Clara said, ignoring his quip. "It's that the guy's consistent. Every single theft happens right here, between 7:15 and 7:30. Same style, same exit. It's like he's taunting us." "Taunting us?" Alex scoffed. "This isn't a Sherlock Holmes story, Clara. It's probably some bloke who realized there are easier ways to get rich than working for minimum wage. What's next? We deduce he has an accomplice, because we find footprints with mud from the south of England." Clara rolled her eyes, but couldn't help the twitch of a smile at his cynicism. "All I'm saying is, we're clearly dealing with someone who thinks they're smarter than the entire Metropolitan Police. And if that's not reason enough to be here, I don't know what is." Their banter was interrupted by a crackle on the police radio. Alex reached over and turned down the volume. The faint sound of dispatch filled the silence for a moment before Clara nudged him. "Speaking of," she said, nodding toward the street ahead. 7:10. Time to earn that mediocre coffee." Across the street, shopkeepers were beginning to open up. A bakery, its windows fogged from the warmth inside, was displaying trays of fresh pastries. Next door, a jewelry shop owner was carefully arranging his glittering wares. A little further down, a clothing boutique's mannequins stood stiffly in their freshly styled ensembles. "Any bets on which shop he'll hit today?" Clara asked, adjusting the lapel of her coat as though preparing for battle. Alex didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the street, his mind working through patterns and probabilities. He finally nodded toward the jewelry store. "My money's on Sparkle and Shine. It's been a week since they hit a jewelry shop and—" "Jogger." Left side, Clara cut in, her voice low but urgent. Alex's gaze snapped to where she was looking. Sure enough, a man in a gray hoodie and running shorts was trotting casually down the pavement. Nothing about him screamed criminal. In fact, he looked like every other Londoner who took their morning runs seriously. Except, as Clara pointed out, this jogger didn't seem to have worked up much of a sweat. "Think he's just warming up or scoping the area?" Alex murmured, his hand hovering near the car door handle. "Let's find out," Clara replied, already stepping out of the car. The man didn't glance their way as they began to follow him, keeping a careful distance. He slowed as he approached the jewelry shop, his movements almost imperceptibly deliberate. "He's not even trying to hide it," Clara muttered under her breath. "Or he's so confident he doesn't think he needs to," Alex replied, his tone clipped. The jogger stopped briefly at the bakery, pretending to admire the display of pastries. Then, with a quick glance left and right, he veered toward the jewelry store. Before Alex or Clara could move, the man darted inside. "Damn it," Alex hissed, breaking into a jog. Clara was right behind him. They reached the door just as the jogger burst out again, clutching a small black bag. His face was hidden by the hood, but they could see the gleam of triumph in his body language. "Stop! Police!" Clara shouted, her voice slicing through the quiet morning. The man didn't stop. Instead, he grinned, actually grinned, as he took off down the street. Alex and Clara were hot on his heels, weaving through startled pedestrians. "He's faster than he looks," Alex panted, his breath forming clouds in the crisp air. "Less talking, more running," Clara shot back, pushing herself to keep pace. The jogger turned a corner, and for a brief moment, Alex thought they had him. But then, just as they rounded the corner themselves, he was gone, vanished like smoke in the morning air. Clara skidded to a halt, her hands on her knees as she tried to catch her breath. "How does he keep doing that?" she gasped. Alex stood beside her, scanning the empty alley. He must have a hiding spot nearby, or a vehicle waiting. Something. "Next time," Clara said, straightening up, "we're bringing backup. And maybe a better plan." Alex smirked, though there was no humor in his eyes. "Next time, we're bringing spikes for his running shoes." It was mid-morning when Alex and Clara found themselves sitting in their cramped office at the precinct. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee, and the distant hum of ringing phones and murmured conversations provided the usual backdrop to their work. Alex leaned back in his chair, tossing a small stress ball between his hands as he fixed Clara with a look that teetered between exasperation and determination. "You ever hear about the jogger who bumps into people on purpose?" he asked suddenly. Clara looked up from her laptop, raising an eyebrow. "Jogger? You mean our thief from this morning?" No. Different guy," Alex said, leaning forward, the stress ball forgotten. "This one doesn't rob shops. He works the streets, gets close to his marks while pretending to be the world's clumsiest fitness enthusiast." "Sounds charming," Clara said dryly, folding her arms. "So what does he do exactly?" "He runs by, accidentally collides with someone," Alex explained, miming the motion with a dramatic flourish. "Oh no, I'm so sorry. Let me help you up." And while he's all smiles and apologies, his fingers are in their pockets, wallets, phones, gone before they know what hit them. Clara tilted her head, intrigued despite herself. "And you know this because?" "Got a tip from a beat cop in Soho. Apparently, they've had a string of complaints, all describing the same helpful jogger." Alex leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms with a look that screamed confidence. "I'm telling you, it's got to be the same guy. Fits the pattern. Quick, in and out, no one ever sees his face clearly. And he's got that air of smugness, like he knows he's untouchable." Clara stared at him for a moment, then sighed. "You really think he's the same thief who hit the jewelry store this morning? Feels like a bit of a stretch." "I'd bet my badge on it," Alex said firmly. "Same area, same timing. He just switches up his MO depending on the opportunity. It's all about blending in." Clara tapped her pen against her notepad, her brow furrowed. "All right, let's say you're right. How do we catch someone like that? He's not exactly announcing his schedule on social media." "We stake him out," Alex said, a glint of excitement in his eye. "Tomorrow morning we set up somewhere with a good view of the street. If he's out there, we'll see him. And if we're wrong?" Clara asked, though her tone had softened. "Then we wasted a morning and missed out on more terrible coffee," Alex replied with a grin. "But if we're right?" Clara sighed again, but this time it was more resigned than skeptical. "Fine. I'll go along with this. But you're buying the coffee tomorrow. And not from the place on Kensington either." "I want real coffee, Alex." "Deal," he said, already reaching for his coat. Stakeout begins. The following morning found Alex and Clara holed up in the second-floor storage room of a small bakery overlooking Kensington Street. The room smelled faintly of flour and yeast, with a stack of empty bread trays leaning precariously in one corner. They'd commandeered a folding table and 2 rickety chairs, setting up their surveillance equipment alongside a pair of steaming cups of what Clara had begrudgingly declared acceptable coffee. Alex peered through the blinds, his eyes scanning the street below with the intensity of a hawk spotting prey. Clara sat behind him, the police radio crackling faintly on the table as she jotted notes in a small notebook. "Anything yet?" she asked, not looking up. "Nothing," Alex replied, his breath fogging up the window slightly. "But it's still early. He's a creature of habit, remember? He'll be here." Clara leaned back in her chair, stretching her arms above her head. "You're awfully confident for someone who's chasing a jogger. What if he decides to skip his workout today?" Alex smirked, his eyes never leaving the street. "People like him don't skip. Routine is what makes them feel untouchable. It's why he keeps coming back to this area. He thinks we're too slow to catch on." Clara shook her head, amused despite herself. "You've really got this guy all figured out, huh?" "I try," Alex said, his voice tinged with mock modesty. For a while, they sat in silence, the minutes ticking by with agonizing slowness. Clara took a sip of her coffee, savoring the warmth against the chill of the room. The street below began to stir with activity as shopkeepers unlocked their doors and early risers made their way to work. "There," Alex said suddenly, his voice low but urgent. Clara was on her feet in an instant, joining him at the window. She followed his gaze to a man in a gray hoodie and running shorts, his pace steady but unhurried as he weaved through the pedestrians. "Gray hoodie again," she muttered. "He really doesn't believe in changing it up, does he?" "Why would he?" "No one ever looks twice at a jogger," Alex replied. They watched as the man slowed near a small group of tourists clustered outside the bakery, a map spread out between them. He veered slightly, just enough to bump into one of the tourists, a middle-aged woman with a brightly colored scarf. "Oh, I'm so sorry," the jogger exclaimed, his voice carrying through the thin glass of the window. He bent down to help her pick up the purse she'd dropped, his movements quick but smooth. "That's him," Clara said, already reaching for the radio. "Wait," Alex said, grabbing her arm. "What do you mean, wait?" Clara hissed. "Just watch," Alex whispered. They saw the jogger flash a friendly smile at the woman before continuing down the street. The entire encounter had lasted no more than a few seconds. "I bet you anything he's got her wallet," Alex said, his voice tight with conviction. Clara frowned, but didn't argue. Instead, she grabbed the radio. "Unit 4-2, suspect spotted on Kensington Street heading south. Requesting backup." As they prepared to move, Alex glanced at Clara with a grin. "Told you he wouldn't skip his workout." Clara rolled her eyes, but couldn't suppress a smirk. "Let's hope we're fast enough to catch him before he finishes it." The jogger had slowed his pace near a bustling crosswalk, his gray hoodie blending seamlessly into the crowd. Alex and Clara watched intently from their vantage point above the street, their breath bated as they tracked his every move. His target was obvious, a woman in her early 40s, wrapped in a crimson scarf that caught the faint morning sunlight. She was focused on her phone, completely unaware of the man veering toward her. "There he goes," Alex murmured, his voice low and tense. "Yeah, I see him," Clara replied, leaning closer to the window. The jogger's approach was smooth, almost artful. He didn't break his stride as he clipped the woman's shoulder, sending her stumbling slightly. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," he exclaimed, turning to catch her arm and steady her. His voice was warm, disarming. "Are you all right?" The woman looked startled, but nodded quickly. Yes, I'm fine. Just wasn't paying attention." No, it's my fault entirely," he said, crouching to pick up the bag she had dropped. He handed it back to her with an apologetic smile, his eyes lingering for a moment. "Really, I didn't mean to scare you." She smiled back, a little flustered. "Thank you. That's very kind of you." Before she could say more, a voice cut through the hum of the crowd like a sharp knife. "Hey, watch where you're going, mate." Both Alex and Clara snapped their attention to the source of the voice. A tall man in a business suit was glaring at the jogger, his face flushed with irritation. The jogger straightened, his expression shifting to mild surprise. "Sorry, didn't see you there," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. The businessman muttered something under his breath, shaking his head as he moved on. The jogger gave a small shrug, then turned back to the woman with one last apologetic nod before resuming his run. "There it is," Alex said, already moving toward the door. Classic distraction technique. Clara grabbed her coat and followed him. "Let's see if he left a calling card." The two detectives hurried down the narrow staircase and out onto the street. By the time they reached the woman, she was tucking her bag back over her shoulder, her attention already returning to her phone. "Excuse me, ma'am," Clara said, stepping in front of her with a polite but urgent smile. The woman blinked up, surprised. "Oh yes? Can I help you?" "I'm Detective Clara Thompson, and this is Detective Alex Reed," Clara said, flashing her badge briefly. "We noticed the jogger who bumped into you a moment ago. Do you mind if we ask you a quick question?" The woman's brow furrowed in confusion, but she nodded. Sure. What's this about?" Alex stepped forward, his tone careful but firm. "We think you might have been up to something. Do you mind checking your bag to make sure everything's still there?" The woman frowned, her hand moving instinctively to her bag. "What? Oh no, he was so nice. He even helped me pick it up when I dropped it." "Even so," Clara pressed gently, "it would help us rule something out if you could just take a quick look." With a small sigh of reluctance, the woman opened her bag and began rifling through it. Her hands moved methodically over her phone, keys, a small makeup pouch, then froze. "Wait," she said slowly, her voice laced with rising panic. "Where's my wallet?" Alex exchanged a knowing glance with Clara, but kept his tone calm. "It's not there?" "No," the woman exclaimed, her movements growing frantic as she searched again. "I know I had it when I left the cafe earlier. It's a red leather wallet." "Oh no. All my cards, my ID." Clara placed a reassuring hand on her arm. The woman looked up, her eyes wide with alarm. "Do you think that jogger?" "Oh my goodness, he seemed so polite." "That's how they work," Alex said grimly, scanning the street in the direction the jogger had gone. "They make you feel at ease, and by the time you realize what's happened, they're long gone." Clara gently guided the woman toward the sidewalk, away from the flow of pedestrians. "Do you happen to remember anything about him? His face, his voice, anything that stood out?" The woman shook her head, still flustered. "Not really. He was wearing a hoodie, and he had this really friendly smile. I didn't think to look closer." "Don't worry," Clara said, her voice soothing. "We've been tracking him, and we'll get your wallet back. Can you describe what was in it?" "Cash, credit cards." "About £50 in cash," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "And 3 cards, debit, credit, and a loyalty card for a bookshop." Alex nodded, pulling out his phone. "We're going to need your contact information. If we recover your wallet, we'll make sure it gets back to you." The woman gave her details, her hands still shaking slightly as she zipped her bag. "Thank you," she said, her voice quieter now. "I hope you catch him. People like that, they just ruin your trust, you know." "We understand," Clara said, her tone earnest. "We'll do everything we can." As the woman walked away, still shaking her head in disbelief, Alex turned to Clara, his jaw set. "That's it," he said. "We've got enough to go after him now. No more games." Clara nodded, her own expression hardening. "Let's track him down. He won't get away this time." The streets of London came alive with urgency as officers descended on Kensington Street, their radios crackling with updates. Alex and Clara were already sprinting through the crowd, their eyes locked on Ryan Taylor, the gray-hoodied jogger weaving his way expertly through clusters of startled pedestrians. "Stop! Police!" Clara's voice rang out, sharp and commanding, cutting through the morning chatter. Ryan didn't stop. If anything, he sped up, glancing back just long enough to flash a look of feigned surprise before dodging around a street vendor pushing a cart of flowers. "He's mocking us," Alex growled, his voice tight as he pushed himself harder to keep pace. Clara, a step ahead, shot him a quick glance. "Less talking, more running, Reed." Ryan turned sharply into a narrow alley, his feet barely touching the ground as he vaulted over a low fence. Alex and Clara followed, the adrenaline pounding in their veins. The alley spilled out into another busy street, where Ryan ducked into the crowd, his movements seamless and unremarkable. "There, left side," Clara shouted, pointing to a flash of gray disappearing behind a parked delivery van. Alex skidded to a halt just in time to see two uniformed officers emerge from a side street, cutting Ryan off. The jogger stopped abruptly, raising his hands in exaggerated surrender. All right, he called out, his voice tinged with irritation rather than fear. "What's all this about?" The officers moved in quickly, one of them gripping Ryan's arm while the other began frisking him. Alex and Clara arrived moments later, their breath coming in heavy bursts. "Ryan Taylor," Alex said, his tone clipped as he stepped forward. "We've been keeping an eye on you. Care to explain what you were doing back there?" Ryan tilted his head, his expression somewhere between amused and annoyed. "Jogging like I do every morning. Last time I checked, that's not a crime." "We'll see about that," Clara said, her eyes narrowing. "Let's see what you've got on you." The officer conducting the search methodically patted Ryan down, checking every pocket. They pulled out a set of keys, a phone, a folded grocery list, and a small pouch containing nothing but loose change. "No wallet?" Clara asked, her suspicion evident. "Nope," Ryan said, shaking his head. "Not unless it's my own. You want to check it? Go ahead. It's in the bag I just handed to the bakery." Alex frowned, the gears in his mind turning. He stepped closer, his gaze fixed on Ryan's face. "You were seen bumping into a woman earlier," he said. "She's missing her wallet now. Care to explain that?" Ryan's brows shot up in mock disbelief. "You think I stole it?" "Mate, I bumped into her by accident. I even helped her pick up her bag." "What kind of thief does that?" "Exactly the kind we're after," Clara said coolly. "Look, I get it," Ryan said, his tone softening as he gestured to the officers. "You're just doing your job. But I didn't take anything. Search me all you want. It's not on me because I didn't do it." The officer who had finished the search nodded toward Alex. "Nothing here. No wallets, no cash." Alex's jaw tightened. He studied Ryan carefully, looking for any telltale signs, a flicker of guilt, a nervous twitch. But the jogger's expression remained calm, almost defiant. "All right," Alex said finally, his voice tinged with reluctance. "We can't hold you without evidence. But don't go too far, Taylor. We'll be watching you." Ryan smirked, lowering his hands as the officers stepped back. "I'm flattered," he said, brushing invisible dust off his hoodie. "You know where to find me. On my morning jog, same time as always." Clara's eyes followed him as he walked away, her fists clenched at her sides. "He's playing us," she muttered under her breath. "Maybe," Alex replied, his gaze still locked on Ryan's retreating figure. "But something's not adding up. If he's guilty, where's the wallet?" New evidence emerges. Frustrated and restless, Alex and Clara returned to the shops where Ryan had made his accidental collision. The streets had settled back into their usual rhythm, but Alex's mind was far from calm. "I hate letting him go," Clara said as they approached the bakery. "Every instinct tells me he's the guy." "He is," Alex said, his voice firm. "We just need to prove it." Clara stopped suddenly, her eyes lighting up. "Wait a second." Alex turned to her, confused. "What?" She pointed to the corner shop next to the bakery. Mounted above the door was a small security camera, its lens pointed directly at the spot where Ryan had bumped into the woman. "Security footage," Clara said, a hint of triumph in her voice. "If this camera's working, it should have caught the whole thing." "Good eye," Alex said, a flicker of hope returning to his expression. The two detectives stepped into the shop, the bell above the door jingling softly. A middle-aged shopkeeper looked up from behind the counter, his expression friendly but curious. "Good morning," Alex began, flashing his badge. Detective Reed, and this is Detective Thompson. We're investigating an incident that happened just outside your shop this morning. Can we ask for your help?" The shopkeeper's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded. "Of course, officers. What do you need?" Clara gestured toward the camera. "That security camera, does it record footage?" "It does," the shopkeeper said. "We keep a week's worth of recordings before it overwrites." "Why?" "Something happened out there. We believe a thief targeted a pedestrian right in front of your shop," Alex explained. "If we could take a look at the footage from this morning, it might help us identify him." The shopkeeper nodded eagerly. "Give me a moment. The system's in the back." As he disappeared into a small office, Alex glanced at Clara. "If we're lucky, this footage might show how he did it." "And where he hid the wallet," Clara added. "Exactly," Alex said, his voice low but resolute. "This guy's clever, but everyone slips up eventually." Moments later, the shopkeeper returned with a laptop, setting it on the counter. He rewound the footage to the specified time and pressed play. "There," Clara said, pointing to the screen. The grainy footage showed Ryan's jog, the collision, and the flurry of movement as he helped the woman with her bag. Both detectives leaned in closer, their eyes narrowing as they watched every detail unfold. "Gotcha," Alex muttered, a slow smile spreading across his face. The footage rolled on the laptop screen, the shopkeeper leaning over the counter with a mix of curiosity and unease. Alex and Clara stood on either side of him, their eyes glued to the grainy black and white display. The familiar scene unfolded, Ryan Taylor jogging at a steady pace, colliding with the woman in the crimson scarf, and bending down to help her retrieve her bag. "There's the bump," Clara said, her tone sharp with focus. "Wait for it," Alex added, leaning in. "Let's see what he does next." On the screen, Ryan made his apologies, handed the woman her bag, and jogged away. But something in the periphery caught Clara's eye, a faint movement just beyond the main action. "Hold up," she said, her voice urgent. "Rewind that a bit." The shopkeeper obliged, dragging the playback bar back a few seconds. "There," Clara said, pointing to the screen. "See that woman? Over to the right, near the bench." Alex squinted at the figure. It was a woman in her late 30s or early 40s, wearing a long coat and a knitted hat. She lingered near the bench, her eyes darting toward the victim and Ryan as if calculating her next move. "She's not just a random bystander," Clara murmured, her eyes narrowing. "Watch what she does when the jogger bumps into the victim." The footage continued. As Ryan bent down to assist the woman, the other figure moved closer. Her actions were subtle, too subtle for the untrained eye, but Clara caught it. The woman's hand dipped briefly into the victim's bag as Ryan's distraction provided cover. "Son of a," Alex muttered, straightening up. "He's got an accomplice." "And she's good," Clara added, her voice tinged with grudging respect. "Slick, quick, and invisible. Most people wouldn't even notice her." The shopkeeper, who had been silent until now, let out a low whistle. "That's bold. Right in the middle of a busy street, too." Clara nodded, her mind already racing. "We need to ID her. She's just as much a part of this as Taylor." The shopkeeper tapped the screen. "I've got a better angle from the camera on the other side of the shop. It might show her face more clearly." "Pull it up," Alex said immediately. The new footage provided a sharper view of the woman's profile as she walked away, tucking the stolen wallet into her coat pocket. Clara jotted down notes, her pen flying across the page. "There," Alex said, pausing the video. "That's good enough for facial recognition." "Lisa Harper," the shopkeeper said suddenly, his tone surprised. Both detectives turned to him. "You know her?" Clara asked. He nodded. "She's a regular around here. Comes in a few times a week, always polite. Didn't think she'd be mixed up in anything shady." Alex exchanged a glance with Clara. "People like her usually aren't obvious," he said. "It's how they get away with it." Clara closed her notebook, determination glinting in her eyes. "We've got enough to link her to the theft, but not to nail Ryan. We need to draw them both out." Alex crossed his arms. And how do you propose we do that? A slow smile spread across Clara's face. With a setup? The following morning, Clara stood outside the main branch of a bustling city bank, clutching a small envelope filled with marked bills. Her outfit was carefully chosen to appear casual, yet slightly affluent. A sleek jacket, designer bag, and a pair of sunglasses perched on her nose. She looked every bit the part of an unwary mark. "This is ridiculous," Alex's voice crackled through the tiny earpiece tucked beneath her hair. "You're a sitting duck out there." "That's the point," Clara muttered, adjusting her scarf as she scanned the street. "If they're watching, they'll take the bait." Nearby, plainclothes officers mingled with the crowd, their eyes discreetly fixed on Clara. Alex was stationed in a parked car a few meters away, his fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel. "You've got a clear view, right?" Clara asked under her breath. "Crystal," Alex replied. "Just don't do anything reckless." "Reckless is half the fun," she quipped, though her tone was light to mask her own nerves. Steeling herself, Clara entered the bank. Moments later, she emerged with the envelope in hand, letting it dangle visibly as she walked. She paused near a newsstand, pretending to adjust her bag, and let the envelope slip to the ground, scattering a few bills in the process. It didn't take long. A shadow moved in her peripheral vision. Clara's heart quickened as she caught a glimpse of a figure bending down, not to return the cash, but to pocket it. "Target spotted," she whispered. "Which one?" Alex's voice was sharp. "It's her," Clara confirmed. "Lisa Harper. She's making her move." Lisa straightened, glancing around casually before sauntering away with the cash. Clara adjusted her earpiece. "She's heading south, past the coffee cart." "Stay with her," Alex instructed. "I'll alert the team." Clara followed Lisa at a careful distance, her pulse pounding. She noticed a familiar figure up ahead, Ryan Taylor, leaning casually against a lamppost, his hoodie pulled up. He spotted Lisa and nodded subtly, his eyes flicking toward Clara's bag. "They're working together again," Clara whispered. "I see it," Alex replied. "Hold your position." Ryan began jogging toward Clara, his movements relaxed but deliberate. She braced herself, preparing for the inevitable collision. "Let's see if we can finish what we started," she muttered to herself. The sun gleamed off the pavement as Clara walked briskly through the crowded street, clutching her bag with the envelope of marked bills still inside. The city seemed alive with its usual bustle, vendors calling out their wares, children tugging on their parents' hands, and commuters weaving through the human maze. Her earpiece buzzed occasionally with Alex's voice, calm but watchful. "Stay sharp, Clara," he reminded her. "They might have clocked you by now." "I'm fine," she replied under her breath, keeping her eyes forward. No sign of Lisa or Ryan yet. As she neared the corner, she deliberately let a few bills slip from the envelope, scattering them onto the sidewalk. She crouched slightly, feigning surprise. Almost immediately, a tall man with long, flowing hair stepped out of the crowd. His leather jacket gave him a slightly rugged look, and his easy smile was disarming. "Excuse me, miss," he said, crouching to pick up the notes. "You dropped these?" Clara straightened, her eyes narrowing briefly as she assessed him. "Oh, thank you," she said, putting on a sheepish smile. "I didn't even notice." "No problem," the man replied, handing the cash back to her with a casual nod. "Careful next time." Before Clara could say anything else, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the throng. "Who was that?" Alex's voice crackled in her ear. Clara glanced around, still holding the returned bills. "Some random guy," she muttered. "He gave me back the money and walked off." "Nothing seems off, though." "Keep moving," Alex urged. "Lisa's still out there somewhere." Clara adjusted her bag and continued walking, her senses heightened. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. A faint shadow in her periphery caught her attention. Turning her head slightly, she spotted a woman with a stroller lingering a few paces behind her. "She's here," Clara murmured into the earpiece. "Lisa Harper." She's following me. Confirmed, came Alex's voice. Stay on your path. We'll tail her from a distance. Clara kept her stride steady, pretending not to notice Lisa. The woman pushed the stroller casually, blending into the sea of pedestrians. Her movements were calculated. She stopped at random intervals, glancing at store windows or adjusting the blanket draped over the stroller. But her eyes kept drifting back to Clara. She's good, Clara muttered. The stroller's a nice touch, makes her look harmless. Stay calm, Alex said. We've got officers ready to intercept if she makes a move. As the minutes ticked by, Lisa continued her shadow game, never straying too far, but never getting too close. Clara ducked into a small bakery, buying a coffee to keep up the pretense of her morning routine. When she emerged, Lisa was still there, now standing near a newspaper stand. She's persistent, Clara remarked. She'll slip up, Alex assured her. They always do. Clara resumed her walk, turning down a quieter street lined with brownstones. The traffic noise faded, replaced by the distant hum of birds and the occasional rustle of leaves. She was almost certain Lisa would make her move soon. As she reached a narrow crosswalk, the sound of running footsteps caught her attention. She turned her head slightly and saw him, Ryan Taylor, jogging toward her with that same casual confidence. Ryan's here, she said softly, tightening her grip on her bag. We see him, Alex confirmed. Stay focused. Ryan slowed as he approached, his familiar apologetic smile already forming. Hey, sorry, he began. I didn't see you there. This time he didn't just bump into her. He sidestepped suddenly, knocking her bag loose from her shoulder. Clara stumbled, making it look unintentional as she clutched her bag tighter. Whoa! Sorry about that, Ryan said, his tone dripping with feigned concern. Before Clara could respond, Lisa appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. She knelt quickly, grabbing at Clara's bag. Here, let me help, Lisa said, her voice kind but hurried. Her hands moved deftly, trying to unclip the bag from Clara's grip. Clara tightened her hold, her expression shifting to one of surprise. It's fine. I've got it. Lisa didn't let go immediately, her fingers lingering on the strap before she straightened, her face flushed with embarrassment. Oh, I'm so sorry, she said quickly. I just thought. You thought wrong, Clara cut in, her voice firm but calm. She glanced at Ryan, who was already backing away, with an air of innocence. Everything all right here, a new voice interjected. Alex, dressed in plain clothes, approached with his badge discreetly displayed. Lisa froze, her eyes darting to Ryan. He turned on his heel and began to jog away, but two officers stepped out from behind a parked car, cutting him off. Ryan Taylor, one of them said, gripping his arm. You're coming with us. What? For jogging? Ryan protested, his tone indignant. This is harassment. Lisa tried to backpedal, her hands fumbling with the stroller. Clara stepped closer, her expression unwavering. Lisa Harper, she said evenly, you've been caught in the act. We know exactly what you've been doing. I don't know what you're talking about, Lisa stammered, her voice rising. I was just trying to help. Save it, Alex said, his voice cutting through her protest. We've got enough evidence to tie you to multiple thefts, including this one. Lisa's eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was none. Two more officers appeared, ready to escort her into custody. Ryan, still protesting loudly, was already being handcuffed and led toward a waiting car. Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, her grip on her bag finally loosening. Well, she said, turning to Alex with a faint smirk. That was a little more dramatic than I planned. Sometimes it's good to keep things exciting, Alex replied, his lips twitching into a grin. As the two accomplices were taken away, Clara and Alex exchanged a glance of mutual satisfaction. The streets felt a little safer now, but they both knew their work was far from over. The sound of raised voices and the murmur of a gathering crowd filled the air as Clara tightened her grip on Lisa Harper's arm. Lisa struggled, her wide eyes darting frantically between Clara and the surrounding officers. "You've got it all wrong," Lisa exclaimed, her voice high-pitched with panic. "I was just trying to help her. I swear." "Help her by stealing her bag?" Clara shot back, her tone sharp. "We've seen the footage, Lisa. You've been working with Ryan to rob unsuspecting people for weeks." "That's a lie," Lisa protested, pulling against Clara's firm grip. "I don't even know who Ryan is." Before Clara could respond, a sudden shout from one of the officers turned her attention. "Hey, he's got the bag." Clara's head snapped toward the commotion. Ryan Taylor, quick as a flash, had darted forward in the chaos and snatched the bag from where it had slipped from Clara's grip during Lisa's resistance. "Stop him," Clara yelled, releasing Lisa just long enough to lunge toward Ryan. But he was too fast. Ryan ducked through the crowd, weaving between startled pedestrians like a seasoned pro. His athletic frame and years of practice gave him an edge, and within seconds, he had disappeared down a side street. "Stay with her," Clara barked at the officers holding Lisa. "I'll get him." But before she could take off, Alex's voice came through the earpiece. "Hold up, Clara. Jim's got him in sight." Detective Jim Carpenter wasn't one to lose a suspect easily. Stocky but swift, he was already sprinting down the narrow alleyway where Ryan had fled. The man's silhouette was a blur ahead, his movements frantic as he realized he was being chased. "You're not getting away, Ryan," Jim shouted, his voice echoing off the brick walls. Ryan glanced back, a flicker of desperation in his eyes. He clutched the bag tightly to his chest, his breaths coming in sharp bursts. At the end of the alley, he veered left, skidding onto a gravel path that led to the riverbank. Jim followed, his boots crunching against the gravel. The river came into view, its surface shimmering under the late afternoon sun. Ryan slowed for a fraction of a second, scanning the area before his gaze locked onto a small rowboat tied to a wooden post. "No way," Jim muttered, realizing Ryan's plan. Ryan sprinted toward the boat, untying the rope with trembling hands. He threw the bag into the boat and hopped in, grabbing the oars. The boat rocked dangerously as he began rowing, his movements clumsy but determined. "Give it up, Ryan," Jim called from the shore. "There's nowhere to go." "Like hell," Ryan shouted back, his voice filled with defiance. He rowed harder, the boat inching further away from the bank. Jim cursed under his breath, scanning the area for anything he could use. His eyes landed on a long wooden pole lying on the dock, a tool used for steering larger boats. He grabbed it and stepped onto the dock, calculating the distance between him and the drifting boat. "Last chance," Jim yelled, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "Turn that boat around and come back to shore." "Not a chance." Ryan spat, his strokes becoming more erratic. Jim didn't hesitate. Using the pole, he hooked the edge of the boat and gave it a powerful pull, destabilizing Ryan's precarious balance. The boat tilted sharply to one side, water sloshing over the edge. "Damn it," Ryan cried, dropping one of the oars to steady himself. Jim took the opportunity to leap into the shallow water, wading through the river with surprising speed. He reached the side of the boat just as Ryan attempted to regain control. "Get back," Ryan warned, swinging the remaining oar in a wide arc. Jim ducked, the oar whizzing past his head. With a swift motion, he grabbed the edge of the boat and heaved himself up, rocking it violently. Ryan lost his footing, toppling backward into the water with a loud splash. The stolen bag floated briefly before Jim snatched it up, securing it under his arm. Ryan flailed in the water, sputtering and coughing as he tried to regain his footing in the waist-deep river. "All right, that's enough," Jim said, his tone firm but not unkind. He extended a hand toward Ryan. Ryan hesitated, his defiant expression crumbling into one of defeat. He let out a long, shaky breath and took Jim's hand, allowing himself to be pulled to shore. As they reached the bank, Alex and Clara arrived, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Clara's sharp eyes immediately landed on the bag tucked under Jim's arm. "Got it?" she asked, a note of relief in her voice. Jim nodded, handing it over. "All here." Clara unzipped the bag quickly, her fingers checking the envelope of marked bills. Everything was intact. Ryan sat on the ground, dripping wet and shivering, his head hanging low. He looked up at Clara, his eyes filled with a strange mix of resentment and resignation. "Guess the game's up, huh?" he muttered. "It's been up for a while," Clara replied, her voice cool. Lisa, escorted by officers, was brought to the scene moments later. Her defiance had given way to quiet panic as she realized her partner had been caught. Ryan glanced at her, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "They got you too, huh?" Lisa didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the ground. Clara exchanged a look with Alex and Jim. The long chase had finally come to an end, but the paperwork and interrogations were just beginning. "Well," Clara said, adjusting her scarf, "at least it'll be a memorable report." Alex smirked. "You always did like a bit of drama." As the suspects were loaded into the patrol cars, Clara couldn't help but glance back at the river, its surface now calm and untroubled. It was a fitting metaphor, she thought. The chaos had subsided for now. The air was tense as the officers secured the riverside, with Ryan sitting on the wet ground, his soaked clothes clinging to him as water dripped into the mud. The sound of footsteps squelching in the damp earth drew his attention. Alex and Jim approached, their expressions hard and unyielding. Ryan's gaze flickered between them, his body tensing like a cornered animal. "All right, Ryan," Alex said firmly. "You've had your fun. It's over now. Get up." Ryan didn't move. Instead, his hand slid subtly into his jacket pocket. His eyes darted to the side, calculating his chances of escape. "Don't do anything stupid," Jim warned, his voice low and steady. With a sharp movement, Ryan pulled out a knife, its blade catching the light. He sprang to his feet, holding the weapon in front of him. "Back off," he shouted, his voice shaking but loud enough to make the nearby officers freeze. "I'm not going down like this." Alex raised his hands, signaling the other officers to hold their positions. His calm demeanor didn't waver as he locked eyes with Ryan. "You really want to add assault to your list of charges?" Alex said, his tone cold. "Put the knife down, Ryan. This isn't going to end well for you." "Stay back," Ryan repeated, waving the knife in a wide arc. "I'm not going back to prison." Jim took a step forward, his movements deliberate and unthreatening. "Ryan, listen to me. You're out of options. There's no way out of this that ends with you walking away. Let it go." Ryan's grip tightened on the knife, his knuckles white. His breathing grew ragged, and his eyes darted between Alex and Jim like a trapped predator. "You think I'm scared of you?" Ryan spat. "You don't know what I've been through." "No, but I do know this," Alex said, taking a slow step closer. "Whatever you've been through, it's not worth dying over. Look around, Ryan. You're surrounded. Drop the knife, and we'll talk." Ryan hesitated, his chest rising and falling rapidly. The blade wavered in his hand. "You've got nothing left to lose, right?" Jim said, his voice steady but edged with a hint of challenge. "Then prove you're smarter than this. Dropping that knife is the only move you've got left." For a moment, it seemed like Ryan might listen. But then, with a growl of frustration, he lunged forward, the knife aimed at Alex. In a blur of motion, Jim stepped in, his arm deflecting the blade while his other hand grabbed Ryan's wrist. Alex moved in simultaneously, twisting Ryan's arm behind his back. The knife clattered to the ground, its metallic sound cutting through the chaos. Ryan struggled, thrashing against their hold, but Jim and Alex's combined strength overpowered him. Within seconds, Ryan was on the ground, his arms pinned behind his back as Jim cuffed him. "Get off me!" Ryan snarled, his face pressed against the dirt. "You made your choice," Alex said coldly. "Now live with it." As the officers pulled Ryan to his feet, Clara arrived on the scene, her sharp eyes taking in the aftermath. She noticed the knife on the ground and the tension etched into Alex's and Jim's faces. "What happened?" Clara asked, her voice steady, but with an edge of concern. "Ryan decided to make things more interesting," Alex replied, brushing dirt off his jacket. "Any injuries?" Clara's gaze flicked between them. "Not unless you count his pride," Jim quipped, earning a faint smirk from Clara. Ryan glared at them, his defiance still smoldering despite his situation. "You've got nothing on me," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "And I don't even know that Lisa woman." Clara's eyebrows lifted slightly, a skeptical look crossing her face. "Funny, considering you two were just working together to rob me." Ryan scoffed, but said nothing, allowing himself to be escorted to the waiting patrol car. Back at the station, the air was thick with anticipation as Clara sat at her desk, going through Lisa's phone records. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, pulling up a series of call logs and text messages. "Got you," she murmured, leaning closer to the screen. "What is it?" Alex asked, stepping into the room. "Lisa and Ryan have been in contact frequently," Clara replied, gesturing to the records. "Calls, messages, everything. They're clearly working together." "Think she'll crack under questioning?" Alex asked, his tone thoughtful. "She's already nervous," Clara said. "I just need to push her a little harder." Moments later, Clara entered the interrogation room where Lisa sat, her arms crossed and her demeanor guarded. "Still sticking to the story that you don't know Ryan?" Clara asked, dropping a file on the table. Lisa glanced at the folder, but didn't respond. "Because your phone records say otherwise," Clara continued, opening the file to reveal printouts of the call logs. "Dozens of calls and texts between you and Ryan over the last month. Care to explain?" Lisa's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting toward the one-way mirror. "Look," Clara said, her tone softening just enough to sound almost sympathetic. "Ryan's not going to protect you. He's already throwing you under the bus, saying you're the mastermind. If you keep protecting him, you're the one who's going to take the fall." Lisa's defenses wavered. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the hem of her sweater. "I didn't. It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Lisa's. "Then tell me what happened." "The truth." Lisa exhaled shakily, her composure crumbling. "Ryan and we worked together," she admitted. "He'd cause the distraction, bumping into someone making a scene, and I'd grab what I could. Wallets, bags, whatever was easy. We'd split the money." "How many times?" Clara asked, her tone firm but not harsh. "Too many," Lisa said, tears welling in her eyes. I needed the money. I didn't think we'd get caught." "Well, you did," Clara said, her voice turning colder. "And now, you'll face the consequences." As Clara stood, Lisa buried her face in her hands, the weight of her confession sinking in. Alex met Clara outside the room, his expression grim. "Think she'll turn on Ryan completely?" Alex asked. "She already has," Clara said, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "It's over for both of them." Alex nodded, his gaze hardening. "Good. Let's wrap this up." The wooden floor of Lisa Harper's small, cluttered apartment creaked underfoot as Clara and Alex stepped inside, glancing around. The living room was dimly lit, with faded curtains pulled halfway shut. A faint smell of old coffee and cleaning products lingered in the air. "Doesn't scream criminal mastermind, does it?" Alex muttered, his eyes scanning the mismatched furniture and scattered toys on the floor. Clara shrugged, kneeling down to inspect the small coffee table covered with unopened bills and grocery receipts. Sometimes the messiest places hide the biggest secrets. Uniformed officers were already combing through the apartment, opening drawers and checking closets. A younger officer, Patel, gestured toward a worn-out armchair in the corner. "Detective Thompson," he called. "You might want to take a look at this." Clara and Alex approached as Patel pointed to the chair. The upholstery was frayed, and the cushions sagged from years of use. "What about it?" Alex asked. "There's something off," Patel said, bending down. He tugged at the bottom of the chair, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the seat. "Well, that's subtle," Clara remarked dryly. Patel pulled out a small metal box, its surface scratched and dented. He handed it to Clara, who set it on the nearby coffee table and carefully opened it. Inside were neat stacks of cash, rubber-banded together, alongside a collection of credit cards and IDs. "Jackpot," Alex murmured, leaning closer to inspect the contents. Clara frowned as she sifted through the cash. "This isn't pocket change. There's at least $5,000 here, maybe more." Patel held up one of the IDs. "Look at this, different names, but all with Lisa's photo." Alex let out a low whistle. "She's been busy." As Clara continued to examine the box, her fingers brushed against a small stack of photographs tucked underneath the cash. She pulled them out, her brow furrowing as she flipped through the images. "What do we have here?" Alex asked, peering over her shoulder. The photos were candid and personal. Lisa laughing with a tall, athletic man, Ryan Taylor in a park. Another showed the two of them with a young boy, no older than 5, grinning as he held an ice cream cone. "Looks like we've got a family portrait," Clara said, her tone grim. Back at the station, Lisa sat in the interrogation room, her shoulders hunched and her hands fidgeting nervously in her lap. She looked up as Clara entered, the file containing the evidence tucked under her arm. "Lisa," Clara began, setting the file on the table. "We've just come from your apartment. Care to explain this?" Clara opened the file, spreading out the photographs alongside images of the stolen cash and IDs. Lisa's face paled, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for words. That's not mine," she stammered. "I don't know how that got there." "Don't insult our intelligence," Alex said, stepping into the room behind Clara. "We found this under your chair. The stolen money, fake IDs. It all points back to you and Ryan." Lisa shook her head vigorously. "No, you don't understand. It's not like that." "Then explain it to us," Clara said, her voice calm but insistent. She picked up one of the photographs and slid it across the table. "This is you, isn't it? With Ryan. And that boy your son?" Lisa's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the photo. "Yes," she whispered. Clara leaned forward, her gaze steady. "So tell us the truth. How are you involved in this? How is Ryan involved?" Lisa hesitated, her fingers trembling as she reached for the photo. Her shoulders sagged, as if the weight of the situation had finally crushed her resistance. "Ryan's my husband," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Clara and Alex exchanged a glance. "He's the one who started all of this," Lisa continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "He came up with the idea, bumping into people, causing a distraction. He said no one would suspect me because I'm a mother. He used that to make me look innocent. And you went along with it," Clara said, her tone sharp. "I didn't have a choice," Lisa exclaimed, tears streaming down her face. "He threatened to leave me and take our son. I didn't know what else to do. I swear I didn't want to hurt anyone." "Lisa," Alex said, his voice firm, "you're telling us Ryan orchestrated the thefts and used you as his decoy. But you still stole from innocent people. You played a part in this, whether you wanted to or not." Lisa sobbed into her hands, her words muffled. "I just wanted to keep my family together. I didn't think we'd get caught." "Well, you're caught now," Clara said, her voice colder. "And unless you want to go down for all of this, you need to tell us everything. Every theft, every plan, everything Ryan did." Lisa nodded weakly, her tears slowing. "I'll tell you," she said, her voice shaking. "I'll tell you everything." Clara leaned back, her gaze steady. "Good. Let's start from the beginning." As Lisa began to unravel the details of their operation, the weight of her choices settled over the room like a storm cloud. Clara and Alex listened intently, piecing together the web of lies and manipulation that had led to this moment. And though the truth was coming to light, Clara couldn't help but feel the sting of the lives torn apart by greed, desperation, and betrayal. The station buzzed with activity as Alex and Clara stood by the evidence room, overseeing the cataloging of the recovered cash and stolen items. One by one, officers logged the evidence, preparing to contact the victims. Clara leaned against the doorway, her arms crossed, a faint smile of satisfaction tugging at her lips. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Alex said, handing over a clipboard to an officer. Clara nodded. "It's not every day you get to call people and tell them their stolen money is being returned." "And 2 career criminals behind bars," Alex added. "That's a win in my book." In the holding cells, Lisa sat on a bench, her face pale and drawn, while Ryan leaned against the bars, his expression hardened. "You dragged me into this." Lisa snapped at him, her voice low but trembling. "Dragged you? Don't play innocent," Ryan shot back. "You loved the money just as much as I did." Their argument was cut short as Alex and Clara passed by, not sparing them a glance. "Well, that's one dysfunctional duo we won't be seeing for a while," Clara remarked, her voice tinged with dry humor. "Let's hope so," Alex replied. Case closed. They walked out of the station together, the weight of the case lifting with each step.